Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode number 37. My name is Samuel Adams, and this is a weekly show dedicated entirely to the world of Xbox, bringing all of the news together in one tight, neat little podcast for you to enjoy. So, if you're new to the show, add it to your feed, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and get it delivered to you every single Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Or if you're like me, I've been accidentally hitting the publish button on YouTube on Saturday rather than schedule. So you probably have been getting it a little bit early if you're a fan of the YouTube side of things. That's on me, but hey, to each their own. With that being said, very big week this week in the world of Xbox. We have Dying Light 2 that just hit store shelves digitally and physically around the world, and we'll talk more about what the critics are saying. Additionally, Grand Theft Auto 6 got kind of a passive announcement alongside the news that Grand Theft Auto 5 will finally see its next-gen port in the next couple of weeks. Additionally, we also have a big acquisition to discuss once again. Bungie is now going to be under the Sony umbrella, a very big news show to bring you today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. Starting things off, let's talk about Dying Light 2 because the reviews are out and it's very divisive when it comes to how critics are receiving this new entry in the very highly esteemed zombie franchise. Of course, this is the second game in the series, as the name hints, and the original Dying Light had a very long tail on it. People played this game and continue to play this game roughly about 10 years later. And so with Dying Light 2 coming out, it's got a big reputation to live up to, a big pair of shoes to fill, and largely it seems to halfway do the job. Right now, GameSpot is giving it a 6 out of 10, but on their review roundup for Dying Light 2, you see that IGN gave it a 7 out of 10, VGC with a 3 out of 5, Press Start with an 8 out of 10, Destructoid with a 7.5 out of 10, and MMORPG with a 7 out of 10 as well. More reviews are continuing to come in, but this is not the 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 across the board kind of experience that I'm sure a lot of people were hoping for. But generally speaking, the community is enjoying it. I think one of the biggest complaints that I've seen so far is that some of the unlocks come a bit later in the game than many people might like. It kind of holds you back and gives you a Far Cry 3 kind of experience where things like the hang glider did not get unlocked until later in the game. That kind of stuff can stunt the experience, especially when we've become used to games like Far Cry 6 that pretty much open up the entire arsenal from the get-go and let you just navigate the world freely. So with Dying Light 2 seems to be holding people back a bit, but generally speaking, it still is favorable within the community. People are still enjoying it, and it does mark one of the biggest games of the year so far. I will say one of my biggest concerns right now is the fact that this is very much so a middle-of-the-road game from the public eye's point of view, and so I think this, for me personally, is going to be a wait for a sale, or even what I did with the original Dying Light, and wait for years until it's $10, because I'm not dying, no pun intended, to play Dying Light 2, and I think that that might be the case for a lot of people. Now, with that being taken into consideration, still doing very good numbers on Steam, and that's just a fraction of the entire player base that is scattered across consoles as well, so you're looking at millions of players around the world still diving into Dying Light 2 and enjoying it. But I do think that the upcoming releases could potentially hold this one back in the long run. If February was not so packed, if this was 2013 and we were living in that kind of timeline, and there wasn't too much going on during the winter period, then I think Dying Light 2 could potentially be in a better position. But especially if you also have a PlayStation 5 that you might play on, Horizon Forbidden West, no matter where you look, that is going to be a big game coming out, and I think that with its open world nature will compete heavily in the public eye's point of view. Whenever somebody goes into a Target or a Walmart or a GameStop and they're looking at open world games, Horizon Forbidden West has an additional layer of polish on it that Dying Light 2 just seems to not have. I have heard that a day one patch fixed a lot of the bugs and issues that many of the early reviews had pointed out, so that is worth considering. But even so, I think Dying Light 2 for me is going to be a wait and see, but generally, it's kind of landing middle of the road, so I wanted to keep you guys in the loop on what is one of the first big releases of 2022. Now let's jump over to the biggest news story of the week. Bungie is joining Sony Interactive Entertainment. That is right, PlayStation now owns Bungie if you want to get down to brass tacks. And when I first saw this story, the irony wasn't lost because, of course, we're talking about Bungie, the original creators of Halo. You know, Halo, the Xbox franchise. It's a very ironic situation here, and Bungie regained their independence, created Destiny, then they signed a 10-year partnership deal with Activision for publishing rights, and now you see that being broken free a couple of years ago, and now they're back underneath a bigger umbrella to kind of give them the capital they need to build the vision that they have for Destiny and for Bungie itself whenever they look to building future franchises and future IP, which they are currently working on right now. But we'll read more of the blog post in a moment. The biggest takeaway here is that Bungie is no longer just a game developer or just a publisher. They're branching in to become a multimedia entertainment company, and that is exactly what they say here in the blog post. But one of the biggest messages here is that creative freedom is not going to be taken away and nothing is going to be fundamentally changed about how Bungie is creating games or really where they are putting their games. For Xbox fans that may be concerned that the next Destiny might not come to Xbox or that future Bungie games might not come to Xbox as a platform, that is not the case. Exclusivity seems to be left out of the conversation entirely here, unless you count the fact they're addressing that it's not going to be happening. This is a larger idea. This is a larger goal for Sony to make Destiny movies and television shows, to take those Bungie IP and help develop new forms of entertainment. Could it go mobile? Who knows? There is a huge opportunity to break out of this one-dimensional kind of approach where people see an acquisition and they think exclusivity. I don't think that's what's going to be happening here at all. But jumping directly into the meat of the blog post, we have a section titled Creative Freedom that reads, quote, "Since taking flight in 1991, Bungie has always charted the future with our own star map, a path that is driven by our people and for our community. We are continuing that journey with new worlds in development, and we can't wait to share them with you. With SIE, the potential for our universes is unlimited. Our future games will take bold steps into unexplored spaces for Bungie, continue to push the boundaries of what is possible, and will always be built on a foundation of creating meaningful, lifelong friendships and memories. We remain in charge of our destiny. We will continue to independently publish and creatively develop our games. We will continue to drive one unified Bungie community. Our games will continue to be where our community is, wherever they choose to play. With SIE's support, the most immediate change you will see is an acceleration in hiring talent across the entire studio to support our ambitious vision. If this speaks to you and you want to help us put a dent in the universe, we are hiring across all disciplines for Destiny 2 and for all new worlds beyond. 3 decades and counting. What makes our worlds come to life is our community and our people in the studio. Our people are the soul of Bungie. Empowered by our people, we have pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible and transformed who we are as a company. Over the past 30 years, the inviting worlds we've built have turned into thriving communities, and that community is the true magic. These communities have taken Bungie beyond games. They have forged lifelong bonds and humbled us with the real, meaningful good they drive within us and the world. More than anything, SIE understands that our people and our community are both the priority and the heart of our success and are willing to stand alongside us as we continue to use our platform to drive action towards a more welcoming and equitable world. Our goal is to build a place where the world's most creative and talented people can come and do their best work, no matter who they are, where they are from, or how they identify. That's the real dent in the universe we want to make, the one we want to last beyond us. Be a part of this future with us. See you Starside, Pete." Fantastic announcement, if I do say so myself. Alongside this announcement of Bungie's acquisition, we also saw that Sony has 10 live service games in development that are all set to launch by 2026. It's a lot of games in a short amount of time, and I bring this up because it shows how Sony's goals are changing, and it kind of explains their reasoning behind the acquisition of Bungie, because not only can you make a Destiny TV show and a Destiny movie, but you can also just continue printing that Destiny money. Destiny 2, let the team create in the way that they have for the past 10 years, and now that income is just coming to you. Now, of course, you have another studio to take care of. I saw $1.2 billion in retention money is going into Bungie to make sure that that creative team doesn't jump ship, but it's very unique to see that Sony is not only going to be spreading this Destiny universe and potentially future universes that Bungie creates across a wide variety of media, but on top of that, you still have a games as a service model set up for Destiny that works incredibly well. And with these live service games that are set to come, Bungie could do some supplemental development on that. And not all of these will be successful, but they give Sony plenty of opportunities to impress gamers and bring something unique into the arena. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I see from this acquisition of Bungie and the acquisition of Activision-Blizzard is that Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony are all justifiably bringing something unique to the table. With Nintendo, they have stayed their ground, they have stuck their head in the sand, and they keep doing what they do best because they don't need to change. Pokemon Legends Arceus continues to sell millions of copies. I think I saw 6.5 million copies in their opening weekend. That's working fine, and they don't need the most powerful hardware. They don't need gritty, realistic, narrative-driven adventure games from Sony. They don't need Game Pass subscriptions. They've got a dedicated audience that loves the games they make. Microsoft has been investing heavily in Game Pass. Activision-Blizzard has been acquired. Tons of acquisitions under the ZeniMax umbrella. You've got incredible IP coming out of Microsoft that will be Xbox exclusive. Sony also has big exclusives, but now they have more games as a service coming, and they're expanding outside of gaming into multimedia to flesh out these universes, because that's what Sony does right now. They tell stories, and they're very good storytellers. The Last of Us, God of War, Horizon, these are awesome stories no matter how you cut it. And to see them fleshed out into various forms of multimedia, that's exciting. And so each of these pillars is doing something that justifies having each of these consoles or being invested in these ecosystems, because there is a unique experience to be had. And I think that's healthy for the industry. I've seen a lot of people talking about monopolies. I've seen viral videos discussing this on Twitter. But ultimately, I'm liking the direction the industry is moving because I've got my Game Pass subscription. I might get a PlayStation subscription whenever it does get announced, who knows? But it's just an exciting time because this competition is breeding innovation. And you see new worlds coming because of it. And you see teams being supported because of it. And I think that's nothing but healthy personally. Very excited for what the future holds. Speaking of being excited for the future, if you're a Rockstar Games fan, specifically a Grand Theft Auto fan, this blog post is going to be one you'll want to read for yourself, because not only is GTA 5 and GTA Online coming to the newest generation of consoles on March the 15th, the next Grand Theft Auto is officially in development. They write, quote, Grand Theft Auto 5 and GTA Online for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S features new graphics modes with up to 4K resolution, up to 60 frames per second, texture and draw distance upgrades, HDR options, and ray tracing, as well as offering the technical advancements of the latest console generation with faster loading times, immersive 3D audio, platform-specific features like advanced haptic feedback, and much more. This is dropping on March the 15th, and on top of that, if you have an existing GTA Online character, or if you would like to transfer over your GTA 5 save, you absolutely can do that. Compatibility is ready to rock, so you don't lose that progress of the past, 10 years, because that's pretty much the number that we're rounding up to at this point for when GTA 5 was actually... I was a junior in high school. I was a junior in high school when this game launched. Okay, just a small aside. I was a junior in high school. I played this in my friend's childhood bedroom. Since Grand Theft Auto 5 launched, I graduated high school. I graduated college, and I'm on my second job after I graduated college. That's a long time. And that's kind of how a lot of people are feeling, which is why at the bottom of this post, we also saw what is next. With the unprecedented longevity of GTA 5, we know many of you have been asking us about a new entry in the Grand Theft Auto series. With every new project we embark on, our goal is always to significantly move beyond what we have previously delivered, and we are pleased to confirm that active development for the next entry in the Grand Theft Auto series is well underway. We look forward to sharing more as soon as we are ready, so please stay tuned to the Rockstar Newswire for official details. On behalf of our entire team, we thank you all for your support and cannot wait to step into the future with you. Signed, Rockstar Games, end quote. Finally, is all that I really have to say. And I've seen a lot of people celebrating this announcement, but my question is when? When will we see Grand Theft Auto 6 or whatever it ends up being officially put out into the world? And I would think 2024 is a safe bet. 2023 is probably what a promotional trailer will show later in the year, maybe. But I would not be surprised if radio silence was the next step for Rockstar here. Ultimately, this is enough to hold people over. I've seen a lot of people ready to dive back into GTA Online, very popular game in and of itself, and it, of course, will continue to be a top seller. I guarantee you this will break the top 20, top 10 selling list across the board, and I'm sure that it's going to be something that people dive back into, and it's nice to see that these PC-like improvements are coming to the newest generation of consoles. 4K, 60, HDR, 3D audio, all of that, because while it does get beat down a lot for being such a long-running game, there's a reason that Grand Theft Auto continues to sell so well. It's because GTA 5 is good. The story is fun. The world is robust. You can do so much with it. And of course, the role-playing community is very, very, very alive. So excited to hear more about GTA 6 in the future. And of course, you have the tweet confirming what's happening. Many of you have been asking about a new entry in the Grand Theft Auto series. With every new project, our goal is always to significantly move beyond what we have previously delivered. That's exciting for me because when you look to Grand Theft Auto 4 and Grand Theft Auto 5, that is a huge leap. And that's the kind of leap that I want to see when we go from Grand Theft Auto 5 into Grand Theft Auto 6. I want something that is pushing the limits of what people thought was possible. When I was playing Grand Theft Auto back in the day, I'm talking about Grand Theft Auto 5, of course, which is now back in the day, that was a world that was unlike anything I had ever played. And I was on the Xbox 360. That kind of experience is generation defining, and that's what I want to see on the Xbox Series X. So very excited to learn more in the months ahead, if we learn more in the months ahead, of course. After a shocking launch on Xbox last year and a debut on Xbox Game Pass, MLB The Show is coming back to Game Pass and Xbox in 2022. Also, as a brief aside, coming out on Nintendo Switch as well, breaking out of that PlayStation mold even further. But Shohei Ohtani is your cover athlete, and more details are available on the Xbox Wire. But MLB The Show 22 launches day one with Xbox Game Pass on April the 5th, and you can also buy it for $59.99 on the Xbox One, and on the Xbox Series X and S, it will run you $69.99. Again, more details can be found here, but the reason that I bring it up is because it's clear this breaking out of the PlayStation mold was favorable for the team at MLB. And while it's interesting to see how this game is published, of course, it is not published in the same way that the PlayStation version is published. It has its own independent publisher. It's still interesting that they have taken that extra step to continue branching out, now bringing the game to the Nintendo Switch, because it's clear that they sold well on PlayStation, sold well on Xbox, and had millions of more players because of Game Pass. I can confirm this is one that I would not have gotten into had it not been for Game Pass. I didn't spend a ton of time in it, but I did play it and I did experience it. And so I think that is going to be one of the reasons that they continue bringing this back year after year to Game Pass, because it generates more income through microtransactions. It gets more people playing the game. And it's always better to have more people playing than fewer people playing, because for everybody like me that just dives in and plays a couple of hours of MLB The Show just to say that they have, you'll have somebody that checks it out, falls in love with the franchise, and continues playing it year after year. Might spend a few dollars here and there on microtransactions, maybe buys future games because of this experience on Xbox Game Pass, on other platforms. The possibilities are limitless, and so I think that availability is something that certainly had a positive impact on MLB The Show. And I think what you'll see is more sports games come to Game Pass where they can be justified. Of course, you see EA Play getting baked into Game Pass right now, and a lot of the Madden games are available there. But outside of the free couple of hour trials that you get with EA Play, I don't believe Madden games are day and date. But that feels like an obvious next step if the show is going to be doing it. But I digress. Very excited to see the show coming back. Might not be one I dive into on day one, just not a big baseball sports guy myself. But it's clear this was a wise investment last year, and it will be a wise investment once again. Jumping back to the acquisition news, I want to talk about a comment from Satya Nadella that caught my eye this week, as it is confirmed that there's going to be an extra level of scrutiny applied to this Activision-Blizzard acquisition because of the size of the deal. I mean, we're talking about $70 billion here, and it stands to reason that should be looked into to ensure the monopolies are not made, which I am adamant this is not going to be a monopoly, and so is Satya Nadella, who says, quote, even with Activision Blizzard, we'll be number 3. This report comes from VGC's Chris Scullion, who writes, it was recently reported that Microsoft's proposed $70 billion deal will be reviewed by the Federal Trade Commission. The Activision-Blizzard deal is expected to close in Microsoft's fiscal year 2023. However, this is subject to closing conditions and completion of regulatory review. In the case of mergers and acquisitions, regulators can prohibit deals that are considered to threaten market competition or suggest remedies such as an obligation to divest part of the new business. Speaking to the Financial Times, Microsoft's Nadella was asked if Microsoft now has to convince regulators that it is not a tech platform to be wary of. The exec argued that the games industry is highly fragmented and claimed that even after its Activision-Blizzard deal goes through, it will be the third largest company by revenue behind Tencent and Sony. Quote, at the end of the day, all the analysis here has to be done through a lens of what's the category we're talking about. And what about the market structure? Even post this acquisition, we'll be number 3 with sort of low teens market share, where even the highest player is also in the teens for market share. It shows how fragmented content creation platforms are, and so that's the fundamental category. Yes, we will be a big player in what is a highly fragmented place. Also, the analysis will have to extend to say, quote, why are these content companies trying to become bigger? It's because the place where the constraints really are is distribution. The only open distribution platform for any gaming content, guess what, is Windows. The biggest store on Windows is Steam, not ours. People can do any payment instrument, whereas all the other gaming distribution platforms are closed. To some degree, that's why we are very hopeful that by becoming stronger, even with low share, we can create more distribution for many small players using things like xCloud, end quote. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and just take this at face value. I would always assume that the leader of the company making a $70 billion acquisition is confident that it will go through. That is kind of common sense. But outside of that, Satya Nadella is a very wise man. I'm reading his autobiography right now on Kindle. Fantastic. Highly recommend you check it out. Very interesting man with a very, very cool backstory of how he kind of rose to fame in Microsoft. But that history aside, it's common for the FTC to look into these acquisitions. And so anyone who is concerned that it might not close, you have no concerns whatsoever. And it will indeed end up closing from my perspective. Legal professionals have chimed in on Twitter. It will end up closing. And so this is just kind of part of the process. But it is interesting to see Satya Nadella comment with such confidence and to explain the situation going on behind the scenes. And I think it shows the overall goal, again, to be where players are, to connect with players no matter where they're playing on, whether it be a mobile phone, a web browser, whatever. xCloud is bringing more games to more people, and on top of that, you're also seeing more games brought to millions of players on the Series X and the Series S as well. So very interesting here, but I wanted to share those quotes from Satya Nadella because it's clear that conversations are starting, and he is certainly calming the rumors that things could be getting a little bit shaky. It's just common, regular procedures. Now jumping over to a new line of Game Pass games coming your way in February, some of which are out now by the time you are watching this. We're talking about Contrast, Dreamscaper, and Telling Lies. You can check those out right now. It is important to note, Telling Lies, one that actually caught my eye because it is like Her Story, actually from the creator of Her Story, directed by, I should say. But this is a full motion video game. So if you've played something like Netflix's Black Mirror Bandersnatch, that's that's kind of the experience you'll get here. I have heard that it's not quite as good as her story, but to each their own. I'm diving in this weekend, and it's a quick little romp. You should be able to finish it in about one night. So if you want to check that out, you absolutely can. Now, on top of that, Contrast, very good looking game as well. One that has some pretty good fame here. So excited to dive into that one. I like the 1920s kind of setting that you have there. February 10th is going to be a massive game, or I should say day for Game Pass, because Besiege is coming to game preview alongside Crossfire X, Edge of Eternity, Skull the Hero Slayer, and The Last Kids on Earth and the staff of Doom. Crossfire X is an interesting one, and if you have not been keeping up with this game, Crossfire is massive globally. It's kind of similar to CSGO in terms of its scale. It's just a global powerhouse. And so now it's branching over and becoming more of a westernized franchise. And what's interesting is it will have multiple campaigns, but only the first campaign in Crossfire X is included in Game Pass. And this is developed in partnership with Remedy Entertainment. So of course you have some development chops there. You have some narrative chops with Remedy, but it also feels like this is a game that has not seen a lot of marketing. And I know that could just be a budget thing. It could just be a happenstance. I don't know. But the marketing really only started this week, and I have concerns about it. I also saw some gameplay, have some concerns about that as well. But I'm excited to dive in on February 10th. Again, it's on Game Pass, so hey, why not? Important to note that one is only coming to Game Pass on console, though. Now also, these other games are coming on February 10th, but even later in the month, two games are dropping on February 14th. You have Ark Ultimate Survivor Edition and Infernax, both of which are going to be available on cloud, console, and PC as well. A couple of updates that are notable here. You've got one for Grounded, one for Microsoft Flight Simulator if you want to dive back into those. But leaving on February the 15th are some pretty notable games. You have The Medium, The Falconeer, Code Vein, Control, and Final Fantasy XII, The Zodiac Age as well, along with Project Winter. Bummed to see Control go. I kind of hope that later on they add the Ultimate Edition in there. That's just my 2 cents, though. Also, I'll trade the Falconeer for Firewatch any day of the week if we're talking about minimalist-style games. But very solid start of the month for Game Pass. Not quite as good as months past. I mean, you had last month with Mass Effect trilogy getting added there. So I think this one is going to give me personally an opportunity to kind of dive into that backlog. And I'm still doing those weeklies in Halo and doing those weeklies in Battlefield. So plenty to play right now, but even more on the way if you are into it. And I think one thing that I do want to say about this specific line of games is that there's a lot of diversity here. Of course, you have The Last Kids on Earth, very child-friendly game, but then you have a full-motion video game. That's unique. Then you have Crossfire X, a first-person shooter. Besiege, which is kind of one of those creation engine-style experiences. Then an anime game, an Edge of Eternity. A lot of good variety here, and I like to see that. It's not just Halo, Battlefield, racing, all of that. A lot of good stuff here to dig into and find your next favorite hidden gem. So I like to see that. Finally, to round out today's show, I wanted to congratulate Phil Spencer himself, who will receive the Lifetime Achievement Award at the DICE Awards. This news comes from GamesBeat, who is quoting the official announcement from the DICE Awards. But Phil Spencer, CEO of Microsoft Gaming, is getting into gaming's Hall of Fame. Spencer will be the latest recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at the 25th Annual DICE Awards on February 24th. The awards come from industry peers who are a part of the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences. Todd Howard, game director of Microsoft's Bethesda Game Studios, will present Spencer with the award at the live event in Las Vegas during the DICE Summit. As Microsoft announced its $68.7 billion acquisition of Activision-Blizzard, Spencer received his latest promotion as CEO of Microsoft Gaming. Previously, he was set head of Xbox and executive vice president of gaming at Microsoft. In short, this is one of the most well-deserved rewards that anybody could possibly have bestowed upon Phil. When you look back at his 30-year history at Microsoft, this man has been there since the beginning. He trudged through the Don Mattrick days, and he came to save the day with the Xbox Series X and S, and really towards the end of the Xbox One generation, began to right the wrongs and turn the ship around. And now what you see under Phil Spencer's leadership is an industry-driving push towards Game Pass as a subscription model that other people can then emulate. You see this positive momentum to bring better experiences to more people around the world. That's what they are trying to do at Microsoft. And that's noble. That's good because it brings the good that gaming brings to more people. And the more people that play your games, the more revenue that is then generated. And I think that becoming a leader in the space is one of the best things that's ever happened to Microsoft in the gaming sense. And, we're talking about a company in the form of Xbox that had its future called into question less than 10 years ago. There could have not been an Xbox Series X and S if other people had been making the calls. And so to see Spencer come in and really change the tone and change the conversation, not only around Xbox, but around the industry, that's pretty massive. And to spearhead these acquisitions, that's even bigger. And so to be able to see what he has achieved in his career, it's really just unprecedented when you look at the leaders that have come before him in the gaming industry. And so this man is going to go down in history and in the history books, literally books, as a man who really did change the game, period. That's really what it comes down to. So congrats to Phil Spencer. Awesome to see. And I certainly think that Xbox is in good hands, and Microsoft has a very good employee on their hands, if I had to say so. But that rounds out this week's episode of Xhibition, an Xbox podcast. If you enjoyed the show and you liked what you saw, hit that subscribe button and keep coming back for more. I do want to say, if you've made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for subscribing on YouTube especially. There has been a huge influx of people subscribing to the YouTube channel. Of course, I've been posting more YouTube shorts, which drives up some traffic. But on top of that, just to see more people subscribing and sticking around and enjoying the content, really awesome to see, and I'm very thankful for it. But no matter where you're watching or listening, thank you so much for checking out Xhibition, and I'll catch you on the next one. Until then, keep on playing.